20 cases, 7 levels. I've gone through countless anime forums and real-life incident reports to compile the most disturbing cases involving anime fans. By the end of this video, you might reconsider watching anime at all. So, let's begin at the tip of this iceberg. Level 1. The Desk Thief. Love Live Sunshine is a series about 9 schoolgirls who form an idol group to save their school from closing. For most fans, it's just a feel-good story, but for one man, it became something much, much more. After watching the series, 28-year-old caregiver Kohei Ohori found himself deeply missing his high school days. Eventually, he decided he didn't just want to remember those moments, he wanted to recreate them. To start, he bought a school desk online, but there was just one problem. The desk looked too new, rather than worn out like a real school desk. So Kohei decided to get real desks from real schools. At night, after closing hours, he would ride his bicycle to nearby schools, and if he found an unlocked door, he would slip inside, grab whatever he could carry, and ride off before anyone noticed. At first, it was just desks, but it soon turned into an obsession. Neighbors began to notice him and reported him, but somehow he kept getting away with it. In one case, he was even stopped by a patrol officer while riding his bike with an amplifier in the basket and a desk under his arm. I don't know how you ride a bike like that, but he did it. But when questioned, Kohei calmly told the officer he was returning home after performing at Shizuoka Station. Surprisingly, the officer believed it and let him go. By the summer of 2021, Kohei had already stolen more than 15 desks, but for him, that still wasn't enough. To fully recreate the classroom he had in mind, he needed around 30, so instead of slowing down, he went bigger. One night, Kohei carried out his largest theft yet. He stole 18 desks, a television, extension cords, a long table, textbooks, tennis balls, and even trophies. Using only his bicycle, he made around 10 trips back and forth to move it all. Talk about dedication. By this point, the scale of the theft had grown impossible to ignore, so this time authorities finally took it seriously. Police began tracing the pattern, and within weeks, they identified him. In the end, Kohei Ohori was arrested and charged with stealing equipment worth 83,000 yen, roughly $600. Unlike many cases, Kohei returned everything he had taken and received a 4-year suspended sentence. Most of us can't wait to get out of high school, and Kohei's there just bringing it with him. The Kill List. Death Note is a popular manga and anime series in which the protagonist possesses a supernatural book that causes anyone whose name is written in it to die. And for one high school student, that series wasn't just fiction. On October 9, 2015, staff at Nashua High School North in New Hampshire discovered a shocking list. It contained the names of 17 students, along with detailed descriptions of how they had supposedly wronged the author and the dates and exact times at which they would die. As one can imagine, parents grew increasingly concerned when their kids refused to go to school.
I think the mystery shrouding this is what's causing the alarm to parents. Parents are afraid, kids are afraid.
One of the girls was slated to die for a dirty look she gave the author in 2nd grade 8 years ago. You're in 10th grade and you're upset about something a 2nd grader did? I'm sorry, that's it. Wow. It turns out that many students knew of the list but stayed silent, fearing that speaking up might land them on it next. And this fear only fueled the tension across the school more. Eventually, police were called to investigate, but after reviewing the situation, officials concluded that there was no immediate danger. The author, who was also a student, had not made any plans to harm others. Still, it's disturbing how a mere list could send a wave of fear through the community and how fiction could dangerously inspire real-life threats. Strangely, this incident was not isolated. The Nashua case was actually the 4th reported incident in 2015 alone. Death Note scares occurred often in the United States between 2008 and 2010, but after an attempt to ban the manga in Albuquerque in 2020, the Death Note scares were ultimately reduced. Level 2. Ghibli Park statues. Ghibli Park was designed as a living movie set where fans could walk through recreations of buildings and scenes from Studio Ghibli films. I'm gonna say Ghibli, I know it's gonna make some of you mad, but that's how Miyazaki pronounces it. That's how I'm gonna pronounce it. It's how they pronounce it in Japan. Let it be. For many, it was a thrilling, immersive experience. But in 2023, the park became the site of an unsettling incident. In one area, guests could take photos with life-size statues of characters from the films, posed in front of recreated backdrops. During a photo session, 3 men began behaving inappropriately. One of them grabbed the chest of Theru from Tales of Earthsea and Marnie from When Marnie Was There. In another photo, a man covered Marnie's mouth and positioned his phone under the statue's gown as if attempting an upskirt shot. What made the situation even more alarming was that the park is an open space, and the men carried out these actions in front of other guests. What made this entire exchange so disturbing is that the characters they targeted were depicted as underage teenagers. Once the photos went viral online, Hideaki Omura, the governor of Aichi Prefecture, held a press conference. He condemned the men's actions and initially expressed interest in pursuing criminal charges. But after meeting with the men and hearing their apology, Omura softened his stance, stating that their remorse appeared sincere and that he was willing to accept it. In response to the incident, the park increased surveillance, and the local government warned that anyone caught engaging in similar behavior would face legal consequences. Since then, there have been no reported incidents, and Ghibli Park continues to operate as a family-friendly attraction. Love Live. In September 2015, a high school boy posted a disturbing picture online. He held a knife in his hand, captioning it, "I'll kill every last Love Live fan in this country with my own hands." In his post, he explained his reasoning. He believed fans of the series were antisocial, comparing them to people who scattered leaflets in the theater and then stepped on them. He was so enraged that he felt they didn't deserve to live. Authorities acted quickly, and within hours, police located his apartment, arresting him before he could carry out the threat. Ironically, during questioning, the boy admitted that he was a fan of the anime himself. His anger was not at the franchise, but at the behavior of other fans. The incident forced the Love Live franchise to take no chances, so security at all related events, including film screenings, was increased to prevent any potential danger. Pre-cure screening. It was 2 days before the 2015 premiere of the popular anime Precure, but instead of excitement, the organizers began panicking. An unidentified person had begun posting threats online, targeting accounts connected to the anime's staff. In those posts, he claimed that bombs had been placed throughout a theater screening the film, but that wasn't all. He also threatened to drive a truck into the building and set it on fire. With the premiere approaching, authorities had no choice but to act. Security around the venue was tightened, and officers began a full search for any explosives. But after hours of searching, no explosives were found. Despite the threat, the premiere went ahead as planned and drew a large audience, and on the surface it seemed like the danger had passed. But behind the scenes, the investigation continued. Eventually, police traced the posts back to 22-year-old Fumiya Otaki. When he was brought in for questioning, his motive raised even more questions. Precure isn't a dark series. It's about young girls protecting the world and spreading hope. During questioning, Fumiya said that he loved the anime, but over time he became jealous of how happy and positive the characters were, so he wanted to ruin that. Although there was no bomb, the fear he created was enough to make it a crime. And in the end, Fumiya Otaki was charged with obstruction of business operations. The mindset of some people, the people in this show that I like are happy, but I'm not happy, and so I'll make everyone else miserable instead of, I don't know, working on myself. Go to therapy, bud. Please. I feel like I can just put a blanket, please go to therapy for a lot of people on this list. I'm just guessing. Level 3. Mad Thad 0890. A weeaboo is a Westerner obsessed with Japanese anime and manga to an extreme degree. Few embodied this more than Thaddeus McMichaels, better known online as Mad Thad 0890. He began his online journey on YouTube and MySpace in 2008, posting silly, cringeworthy videos that initially seemed harmless. But in 2009, he uploaded a video titled, "If you are thinking about taking your life, watch this." In it, he explained the personal crisis that had driven him to despair. His girlfriend, who was also his coworker, had cheated on him with another colleague.
It was gonna be over this girl I had went with, and she was really my first love and first girl that ever gave me a chance to go with me. Cause you see from my videos, I'm not the ladies' man, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, well, basically she ruined me and she kept on cheating on me and stuff. And
according to Mad Thad, the betrayal plunged him into deep depression and caused him to lose interest in real women, retreating entirely into anime and video games.
So it's like, kind of, anime saved my life, really, kind of. It stopped me from doing something, because all the animes I never seen, I never experienced yet, the ones that yet to come out, I mean, really, because, like, I guess you could say that what saved my life was my interest. Because I play video games, and I watch anime a lot, listen to music, and basically, One Piece really saved my life, so...
Mad Thad's obsession grew. His first viral video was a parody of Lucky Star, which earned him popularity across 4chan and anime forums. Over time, his behavior became increasingly bizarre. In 2010, Japan passed a law restricting explicit depictions of characters under 18. Instead of agreeing with the new reasonable regulation, Mad Thad posted a 10-minute-long video ranting that it didn't matter because they weren't real people. When he began watching the anime School Days, his obsession reached another level. He became fixated on a character named Kotonoha, declaring her his waifu, a fictional character with whom a fan feels a deep romantic connection similar to having a wife or girlfriend. But Mad Thad didn't stop at words. He framed pictures of Kotonoha, printed them on pillows, updated his Facebook relationship status to show he was dating her, and even created a Facebook account for her. There, he replied to his own comments and chatted with himself as if she were real. And yet, he didn't stop there. He celebrated her birthdays with songs, cake, and candles, and that obsession soon became dangerous.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Kotonoha. Happy birthday to you. Blow out the candles, Kotonoha. Yay! I love you.
Mad Thad began justifying explicit content online. He insisted that shows like To Catch a Predator and its host Chris Hansen were cruel. According to him, offenders were, quote, friendly men who just wanted a good time. his online posts became so disturbing that authorities were alerted. In March 2012, the FBI raided his apartment, and they discovered approximately 300 explicit videos and images. Matt Thad was arrested, but quickly released on bail on the condition that he be fitted with an ankle monitor and be prohibited from using the internet. And just 3 days later, he taunted authorities online, claiming they had failed to find his backup hard drive. He was taken back into custody and later accepted a plea bargain. Matt Thad 0890 was sentenced to a minimum of 5 years and a maximum of 25 years in prison. He's also required to register as an offender for life. He was released from jail in October 2018, and of course he's still active on social media. John Lay. Anime Matsuri is an annual anime convention held in Houston, Texas, organized by John Lay. The 4-day event typically features cosplay contests, gaming events, and workshops. But after the 2015 edition, the conversation around the convention began to shift, and not in a good way. Many female attendees started speaking out about their experiences. Among them was Nina Ryanders, who runs a German wig shop popular within Japanese fashion circles. She shared her story in a detailed blog post. According to Nina, she first met Lay in Europe when he visited to shoot promotional content for the convention. During that trip, he invited her on an all-expenses-paid visit to Disneyland with his family, which she declined. Now, at the time, she didn't think much of it, but things began to feel different after she had dinner with Lay and his friend. During the outing, he repeatedly made inappropriate jokes and comments. Strangely, whenever his wife and children were around, his behavior completely changed. Months later, Lay reached out again. This time, he was inviting her on another all-expenses-paid trip to Japan. Once again, she declined. However, Nina didn't just recount her experience. She backed it up with screenshots of their Facebook conversations, including messages where Lay allegedly asked her to send explicit photos. Once her story went public, others began to come forward. Several women accused Lay of inappropriate physical behavior, including touching and lifting their skirts. One of them was Stephanie Tai, a former moderator of the Houston Lolita Community Facebook group. She claimed that Lay lifted her jabot, a piece of fabric covering the chest, to see what was underneath. Like Nina, she also shared screenshots of their conversations. As the accusations grew, Lay responded, but not as many expected. He didn't outright deny the claims. Instead, he described his actions as jokes among friends, stating that if anyone had told him they were uncomfortable, he would have stopped. And that explanation didn't sit well with the public. The public backlash quickly increased. More women spoke out, and calls to boycott Anime Matsuri began to spread. The convention and Lay himself came under intense scrutiny. Eventually, Lay released an official statement through the convention's PR team. In it, he apologized and stated that he had completed an online sexual harassment course to better understand the consequences of his actions. He also announced that he had stepped down from his role as a kawaii ambassador, a position tied to Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Even then, the controversy didn't fully disappear. Over the years, it has resurfaced multiple times, often accompanied by hashtags calling for a boycott of Anime Matsuri. However, those efforts have had little lasting impact. The convention is still ongoing and continues to be organized by John Lay. In fact, Anime Matsuri is now approaching its 20th anniversary, with the next event already scheduled for July 2026. Now, so far, you've seen obsession, but what comes next is where things stop making sense. So subscribe, and let's keep going. Level 4. Yuka Takaoka. At first glance, Yuka Takaoka looked like a typical anime fan. Her social media was filled with cosplay photos, many of which were inspired by a fictional character known as a yandere. A yandere is someone who starts off loving and affectionate, but over time becomes obsessive and dangerous. Yuka worked as a manager at a hostess club in Japan where female staff entertain male customers. Around October 2018, she met Phoenix Luna, a host at a nearby club. His role was similar, except he entertained female customers instead. It didn't take long for them to grow close, and soon they started dating. At first, the relationship seemed normal. However, things slowly began to shift. While Phoenix saw his interactions with customers as part of the job, Yuka saw them differently. And what he considered work, she began to take personally. And because of this, her feelings started to change. Soon, her concerns turned into jealousy, which gradually grew into possessiveness. At one point, she even spent over $9,000 buying all his services at the club just to keep him away from other women. Even with these issues, the relationship didn't end. It carried on until one morning. On May 20th, 2019, Yuka invited Phoenix over to help organize her apartment. He was meant to arrive earlier in the day, but work delayed him by 3 hours. By the time he got there, he was exhausted, so after arriving, he decided to take a bath to relax, but not long after, he fell asleep. While he was asleep, Yuka went through his phone, and there she found a photo of him with another woman, likely a customer. But instead of confronting him, Yuka decided to do what a yandere would do. Phoenix suddenly woke up to a sharp pain in his stomach. Now at first it didn't register, but as he looked up, he saw Yuka standing over him, holding a knife. She had literally stabbed him. Now instinctively, Phoenix pushed her away and rushed toward the door, but Yuka wasn't going to let him leave so easily. She chased after him and managed to grab him before he could escape. Still, he fought his way free and made it to the elevator. By the time he reached the lobby, however, he had lost too much blood to keep going, so he collapsed. Moments later, Yuka followed him downstairs, and she did something no one expected. When authorities arrived, Yuka was still at the scene. She wasn't panicking or trying to run. Instead, she sat calmly beside him, smoking and using her phone as if nothing had happened. Officers also found notes she had written in blood, repeatedly saying, "I like you," over and over again. Meanwhile, Phoenix was rushed to the hospital with only a 20% chance of survival, but against all odds, he survived. Later, when he spoke about the incident, his response surprised many people. Despite everything, he said he held no anger toward Yuka. In fact, he even asked the court to reduce her sentence. In the end, Yuka Takaoka was charged with attempted homicide and sentenced to just 3 years and 6 months in prison. But that wasn't the end of her story. While she was in prison, some anime fans began supporting what she had done. Even a GoFundMe page was created in her name, and before it was taken down, it had already raised over $3,000. After serving her sentence, Yuka eventually returned online. Now she live streams and posts content, which parts of the internet continue to praise her as a real-life yandere. Otaku Kidnapper. In March 2014, a mother returned home to find a handwritten note from her teenage daughter, Anna Saito. In it, Anna claimed she was taking a break from school and leaving home. She told her parents not to look for her, but something about it didn't feel right. Anna had never given them a reason to worry before, so her parents immediately reported her missing. As news of her disappearance spread, a neighbor came forward with a detail that changed everything. She had seen Anna speaking to a man on her way home from school. Not long after, another letter arrived. This time, Anna apologized for worrying her parents and again insisted they should stop searching for her. Although the handwriting matched, the situation did not. Anna had left without her belongings, not even her phone or a few pieces of clothes. To investigators, that didn't look like a runaway. Still, suspicion alone wasn't enough. Anna Saito remained missing for 2 years. And after 2 years, police received a call from a public phone. It was Anna saying she had escaped from captivity. Against all odds, she was alive. When she was found, what shocked everyone even more was her condition. Unlike many victims, Anna appeared physically unharmed and calm. She didn't look like someone who had spent 2 years in captivity. Then she explained what happened. On the day she disappeared, a man approached her claiming to be a lawyer. He told her that her parents were getting divorced and that she needed to come with him. Trusting him, Anna got into his car, but instead of going to a courtroom, she was taken to an apartment where she stayed in a room for 2 years. She later identified her captor as Teriuchi Kabu. Police moved quickly, but they didn't have to search for long. The next day, officers received a report of a man wandering outside and injured. It was a wounded Teriuchi after a failed attempt to kill himself. On the surface, Teriuchi appeared ordinary, a university graduate with an interest in aviation, but his lifestyle told a different story. He was deeply immersed in anime culture, the kind of fan often described as an otaku, someone who spends most of their time isolated, absorbed in fictional worlds, and detached from real-life relationships. During questioning, Teriuchi admitted that he had wanted to kidnap a girl since middle school, and Anna had not been a random victim, she had been chosen. Inside the apartment, she was kept in a small room that could only be locked from the outside. She was rarely allowed out, and when she was, he watched her closely. Over time, he began to control her reality. He told her no one was looking for her, that she had been abandoned. And for a while, Anna believed him, until one day when she found a missing poster of herself online, and that was when everything changed. When an opportunity presented itself, Anna took it. Teriuchi had left the door unlocked to buy a new phone, and this time she ran to a public phone and finally made a call that ended her ordeal. Teriuchi Kabu was convicted of kidnapping and sentenced to 12 years in prison. Matthew Masumi Toyotame. Matthew Masumi Toyotame was a 27-year-old cosplayer from California. More than any other character, he loved dressing up as the Yellow Ranger. But instead of being strong and heroic, Matthew's version came with an obsession that went far beyond cosplay. In 2013, his passion led him to collaborate with other cosplayers on a YouTube series called Armored Rangers. It was during this project that he met Julia Moreno-Jenkins, who played the Pink Ranger. Now, Matthew quickly developed feelings for her, but there was one problem. Julia was already in a healthy, committed relationship and did not see him the same way. Matthew, however, refused to accept that. He began sending her gifts and handwritten notes, repeatedly confessing his feelings, each time Julia rejecting him. When the series eventually ended, the group went their separate ways. Julia stayed active online and continued sharing her cosplay, slowly building a name for herself in the Power Rangers community. Matthew, on the other hand, did not move on. He continued to stalk her for years, sometimes even showing up at her house uninvited. At some point in 2018, he asked her out again. This time, Julia didn't just reject him, she took legal action and obtained a restraining order. Now after that, Matthew went quiet. He stopped contacting her and Julia blocked him across all platforms. And for the first time in years, it seemed like it was over, but it wasn't. On January 13, 2019, during the Anime Los Angeles convention, Julia ran into Matthew again. She avoided him throughout the event and tried to stay focused on her activities. To Matthew, this was an opportunity. At the event, CCTV footage from the parking lot showed him standing casually, lighting a cigarette. Nothing seemed unusual at first, but moments later, he walked up to a car and began tampering with it. Then suddenly, a flame burst out, catching even him off guard. Within seconds, the fire spread, the car was engulfed, and the flames quickly reached nearby vehicles. The heat became so intense that tires began to burst, sending loud explosions through the area. Guests at the hotel started evacuating, thinking there was an active shooter. By the time the fire was put out, 7 vehicles had been destroyed. Now, thankfully, no one was killed, but the damage was severe and authorities wanted answers. Investigators reviewed the CCTV footage and quickly identified the target. The first car set on fire belonged to, big surprise, Julia. Julia and her boyfriend also identified Matthew, who had not attempted to flee. Later that morning, police arrested Matthew Masumi Toyotome at his home. He was charged with stalking, multiple counts of arson, and violating a restraining order. Folks, when you express interest in someone and they say no, move on. Just move on, okay? I know it's tough. I know it sucks sometimes, but move on. Level 5. Darian Hunt. 22-year-old Darian Hunt loved anime and expressed it through cosplay, and that same passion would later place him in a deadly situation. On September 10, 2014, police received a report of a man walking with a sword. When officers arrived, they found Darian dressed as an anime character carrying what appeared to be a samurai sword. According to police, Darian refused commands to drop the weapon and then fled the scene. Officers pursued him on foot, and during the chase, they claimed he turned and made a threatening movement with the sword, which led them to open fire. Darian Hunt was shot multiple times and pronounced dead at the scene. So that was only the beginning of Darian's case. An autopsy later revealed details that raised questions about the officer's account. Darian was shot 6 times from behind, leading people to question how he could lunge at the officers and still be hit in the back at the same time. Witnesses also stated that Darian had not been threatening anyone and was simply walking with what was later confirmed to be a replica sword, part of his costume. In response, authorities maintained that the officers acted within the law. They stated that even with those findings, the presence of a weapon and his movements during the encounter were enough for officers to perceive a serious threat. Ultimately, prosecutors declined to file charges, ruling the use of force legally justified. The Death Note Killer. On September 28, 2007, 2 hikers in Belgium noticed a strong, foul smell coming from a wooded area. When they went to check, they discovered parts of a body. It was horrific, but it would take investigators years to crack. When officers arrived, they found 2 notes placed near the remains. Written on them were the words, "Watashi wa Kira desu," meaning, "I am Kira," a reference to the anime Death Note. From that moment, the case became even more confusing. Investigators struggled to identify the victim. Too many body parts were missing, leaving them with very little to work with. All they could determine at first was that the victim was likely Caucasian, between the ages of 20 and 30, and had died only a day or 2 earlier. But that wasn't enough to move the case forward. At one point, investigators even considered the possibility that it was a staged act involving medical students with access to cadavers. When they called for witnesses, only one person came forward. A jogger reported seeing a blonde man lying in the same area for 2 days. She assumed he was asleep and didn't think much of it. Unfortunately, that information led nowhere. Years passed, but the investigation continued quietly in the background. In 2010, a breakthrough finally came. Police announced the arrest of 4 individuals connected to the 3 were charged directly, while the 4th was accused of failing to assist someone in danger despite being present. Under questioning, the suspects confessed. The victim was identified as 𝕤𝕠𝕞𝕖𝕤. He had been squatting in an apartment with the suspects. On September 11, 2007, an argument broke out after he was asked to leave. The disagreement turned violent, and the group attacked him until he died. After the killing, they dismembered the body and disposed of it. The note referencing Death Note was not part of the crime itself, but something added afterwards. The suspects, who were fans of manga and anime, left it behind as a kind of signature. In 2013, 2 of the suspects were sentenced to 20 years in prison, while another received a 23-year sentence. The 4th suspect fled and remained on the run until May 2016, when he was finally rearrested and served a 23-year sentence. Junji Matsumoto. Junji Matsumoto was a 59-year-old man living in Fukuoka, Japan, with his elderly parents, 87-year-old Hirokazu and 88-year-old Maki. They shared a 2-story home where the family had once run a liquor store. For nearly 40 years, Junji had been unemployed, relying entirely on his parents for support while spending most of his time indoors watching television, especially anime. But over time, things changed. After retiring, both of his parents developed serious health issues. They became wheelchair-bound, and Junji, who had depended on them his entire life, now became their primary caregivers. It was a role he wasn't prepared for. On June 20th, 2021, Junji was watching anime when his father asked for help going to the restroom. For several minutes, he ignored him, but Hirokazu kept calling out. Eventually, Junji snapped. He stood up, took a cord, and strangled his father to death. By the time he looked up, his mother was staring at him. Faced with a witness, Junji strangled his mother as well. Afterwards, he stacked their bodies and placed them inside an unused industrial refrigerator, sealing it shut with tape. The next morning, he began covering his tracks. He called a rehab center to cancel his mother's appointment, claiming she needed a visit to hospital. He also contacted a welfare office to cancel a scheduled home check. 3 days later, Junji fled on his bicycle and boarded a train. With nowhere to go, he wandered across Japan for several days, traveling as far as Akita, hundreds of kilometers from Fukuoka. Meanwhile, a concerned relative who couldn't reach the family contacted authorities for a welfare check. When officers entered the home, they discovered both bodies inside the taped refrigerator. Junji, the only other resident, quickly became the prime suspect. On July 5th, he was arrested at a hotel parking lot. Initially, he was charged with abandoning the bodies, but during questioning, he confessed to killing both of his parents. When asked why he did it, he simply replied that it bothered him that his parents interrupted him while he was watching anime. Junji Matsumoto was later sentenced to 30 years in prison. The Bleach Killer. In 2017, 36-year-old Gabriel Hikari Yad Elohim went to an apartment building to meet a female adult worker to buy illegal substances. When she told him to wait downstairs, she fled through an upstairs balcony, taking Gabriel's $200 with her. Anger and confusion boiled over, and when she didn't return, Gabriel did the unthinkable. He went to the apartment of 69-year-old Michael Mulholland, a man he had never met before, and without warning, Gabriel began kicking and stomping on him for roughly 7 minutes until Michael died. After his arrest, Gabriel's behavior was bizarre and unsettling. During questioning, he raised his hand as if offering a toast even though no one else was present. He spoke to himself and to the ghost of Michael Mulholland. And on top of that, he delivered a long monologue entirely in Japanese. Gabriel was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and despite pleading not guilty by reason of insanity, he was convicted of homicide and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 13 years.
Mr. Yad Elohim, on the charge of murder, I sentence you to life imprisonment and impose a minimum period of imprisonment of 13 years.
But the case doesn't end there. During his appeal at the Supreme Court, his defense lawyers presented an unusual and disturbing argument. They claimed that Gabriel had been acting as an anime character. According to them, he had been reenacting an episode of the Japanese anime Bleach. The court was even shown scenes from the series that mirrored the attack, including the Japanese monologue he had delivered upon his arrest. Although the judges acknowledged the evidence might be relevant, they also said they could not fully determine how it would have changed the original trial. In the end, they denied his application for leave to appeal, but suggested that the court could consider reviewing the case in light of the new material. As of now, Gabriel Hikari Yad Elohim is still serving his life sentence. Shoko Asahara. Shoko Asahara was the founder of a spiritual movement called Aum Shinrikyo, formed in Japan in the 1980s. It blended elements of Buddhism, Hinduism, and apocalyptic teachings, but Asahara did not preach peace. Instead, he claimed the world was heading toward catastrophic destruction and only his followers could survive. Asahara declared himself Christ and the first enlightened one since Buddha. He said he had the power to transfer spiritual abilities to his disciples and absolve their sins.
特に影響力のある若者たちにいい意味で与えていかれたら、もうそれこそ素晴らしい人生になるんじゃないでしょうかね。
そうですか。なんかいいな。そうです。なんか自信が持てたんじゃないですか。
また場所を改めてですね。
According to him, humanity faced destruction unless people joined Aum Shinrikyo. To spread their message, the cult didn't rely only on speeches or pamphlets. They used anime-style media and manga to try to attract young, educated people. In 1991, the cult even established its own animation studio, the Manga Animation and Team. One of their most notorious works was a series titled Chotsu Sekai, meaning Beyond the World. The anime depicted Asahara as a humble yoga instructor who, through spiritual enlightenment, became a powerful leader with supernatural abilities like levitation, telepathy, and even control over the Japanese government. And the propaganda worked. Asahara quickly gained tens of thousands of followers, all of whom paid money to access teachings and events. Shoko Asahara was growing richer, and Aum was still growing. And still, that wasn't enough. Asahara wanted everyone under his control. So, in 1995, the group carried out one of Japan's deadliest terrorist attacks. In the morning of March 20th, Aum members released sarin gas on 5 Tokyo subway trains. Commuters were suddenly choking, vomiting, and collapsing. By the time authorities regained control, 13 people were dead and 6,000 were injured. Police raided cult compounds nationwide, and the full scale of Aum's activities were revealed. Officers found stockpiles of chemical weapons, explosives, and laboratories used for illegal production. Hundreds of cult members were arrested, but Asahara evaded capture for months. On May 16, 1995, he was finally found hiding within a wall of a cult building and arrested. The government stripped Aum Shinrikyo of its legal religious status. After an 8-year trial, Asahara was sentenced to death in February 2004. He remained in prison until 2018, when he was executed by hanging. Level 6. Hatchet Case. Anime fans were eagerly awaiting the final episode of School Days when a shocking event forced its cancellation. A teenage girl in Kyoto lived with her parents and sister. Her father was a police sergeant, and on the surface, the family seemed ordinary, but tensions ran high behind closed doors. The girl and her father frequently argued, and the disagreements eventually became physical. Adding to her distress, she discovered that her father had been involved with another woman, and both her mother and sister seemed to ignore it. This became the breaking point. One day, she purchased a hatchet from a nearby store, changed into a black dress, and entered her parents' room while they slept. She hacked her father several times on the neck until he died. Her mother immediately called the police, who arrived to find the sergeant dead. Shockingly, the girl calmly admitted to the murder, stating that she hated her father and could not forgive her family for ignoring his behavior. Investigators noted that the girl was a fan of horror anime and had once expressed a desire to become a manga artist. Online, users began drawing comparisons to violent scenes in Higurashi, a horror anime series. Because of the parallels between the girl and the characters in School Days, Japanese TV stations decided not to air the series' final episode. The details of her sentencing were not made public. Trey Sessler. On September 14, 2006, Trey Sessler started the YouTube channel LensCap Productions, where he uploaded anime reviews and comedy skits. At first, his content felt harmless, just another creator sharing his interests. But his channel became a record of a slow descent into darkness. For the first few years, Trey maintained his content style. Over time, he became popular in the anime community, and fans looked forward to his reviews. He even earned the nickname Mr. Anime. But just at that peak, his content shifted. Trey started appearing on camera drunk, sometimes holding weapons, and with each video digressing from his anime content. At first, viewers interpreted it as being performative, but with each behavior, it soon became clear that it was deliberate. In February 2012, Trey uploaded a video titled "Mr. Anime is Planning Something." In it, he casually announced that he would be taking a short break from posting.
This is just an update video to let you guys know that I'm going to reward myself with probably a 2 or 3 week break coming up here from YouTube videos, anime reviews in particular. I might do some blog stuff.
The title sounded dramatic, almost like a joke, but in hindsight, it was a warning. On May 20th, 2012, everything changed. Trey's mother, Rhonda, had taken him to the garage to show him a dent in her car. In that quiet moment, he acted. He shot her multiple times at close range. From there, the situation escalated rapidly. He moved through the house and shot his brother. The brother initially survived and tried to hide in the bathroom, but Trey forced his way in and shot him again. Moments later, his father, who had been asleep, was jolted awake by the gunshots, and upon walking out of his room, Trey shot his father twice. By that point, the entire family was gone. Yet Trey remained in the house, pacing, returning to the bodies, and firing additional shots. And even after that, he didn't stop. He wrote messages on walls expressing both love and remorse, destroyed parts of the home, and not even sparing family pets. But this was only part of a larger plan. Trey then got into his car and drove toward a local high school where he graduated. There, he sat in the parking lot for several minutes, thinking about his original plan to carry out a school shooting. In the last minute, he decided against it. Instead, he drove away and went to a friend's house. Not long after, concerned relatives requested a welfare check as they hadn't heard from anyone in the house. When police entered the home, they found the scene and quickly issued a warrant. Trey was arrested hours later without resistance. During questioning, he admitted to everything.
The thing about my family is I would protect them with my life, but at the same time, if anyone was going to hurt me, it was going to be me.
He told investigators they had planned a larger attack but stopped when the reality of it fully set in. He also claimed to have killed his family because he did not want them to live with the shame of what he was going to do. Trey Sessler was charged with 3 counts of capital homicide and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Akihabara Massacre. Tomohiro Kato lived his life believing that no one noticed or cared about him. so he decided to make sure they did. Kato was raised in a financially stable, high-achieving family with rigid expectations. Both he and his brother were pushed to excel in every area of life, but under his mother's standards, even the smallest mistake was unacceptable. If Kato made an error as minor as missing a letter in his homework, she would tear it up and force him to start again. And when she felt he was being stubborn, the punishments became harsh. In one instance, he was made to eat food from the floor. In another, he was forced to stand outside for hours in freezing snow. For a time, the pressures seemed to work. Kato performed well through elementary school and into junior high, but eventually that structure began to crack. By high school, his performance dropped significantly. He ranked 300th out of 360 students, and when it came time for university, he failed the entrance exams. From there, things continued to slip. He trained as an auto mechanic but struggled to succeed. His relationship with his parents deteriorated and he gradually stopped going home. At the same time, his isolation deepened. He couldn't keep a job, had no close relationships, and fell into debt. The idea that no one cared about him became something he fully believed. In 2006, he attempted to end his life by crashing his car into a wall, but he survived. After that, he withdrew even further. With no real social circle, Kato immersed himself in online spaces. When he wasn't being completely obsessed with anime, he spent time on online bulletin boards where he frequently posted about his loneliness and frustration over having no friends or romantic relationships. Then, in June 2008, things reached a breaking point. After getting into an argument at work over missing clothes, which he believed his coworkers had taken, Kato stormed out. Although he hadn't actually been fired, he convinced himself that he had lost his job again. Instead of returning, he went online and posted a chilling message. "I will kill people in Akihabara." And that is exactly what he did. Akihabara, better known as the center of anime and gaming culture in Japan, is usually filled with crowds, especially on Sundays when streets are closed to vehicles for what's called pedestrian paradise. On June 8, 2008, Kato drove a truck through a red light and into a crowd of pedestrians, hitting several people instantly. As bystanders rushed in to help, the situation took an even darker turn. Kato stepped out of the vehicle armed with a dagger and began attacking people in the street. He moved through the area, targeting anyone within reach, turning a busy district into chaos. When police arrived, he attempted to flee but was eventually cornered and arrested. By the end of the attack, 7 people had lost their lives. Years later, on March 24, 2011, Kato was sentenced to death. He remained on death row until July 2022, when the sentence was carried out. Level 7. Kyoto Animation Studio. Kyoto Animation is one of Japan's most celebrated anime studios, responsible for hits like Clannad and Nichijou. But the studio's building, once a place of joy for fans, would soon be remembered for tragedy. On the other side of Kyoto lived 41-year-old Shinji Aoba. After losing his father at 21, Shinji had drifted apart from his siblings and struggled to hold steady jobs. This eventually led him into robbery, for which he was arrested and served 6 months in jail. After his release, Shinji lived alone in an apartment, spending most of his time immersed in anime, including series produced by Kyoto Animation. And the two would eventually cross paths in a deadly way. Kyoto Animation held an annual writing contest open to anyone. Winners could earn up to 1 million yen, around $10,000, and exceptional entries could even be published or adapted into anime. Between 2017 and 2018, Shinji submitted entries twice, but both were eliminated in the first round. From that point, he began harboring resentment toward the studio. Though frustrated, there was little he could do until he watched one of Kyoto Animation's productions. Shinji convinced himself that certain scenes had been plagiarized from his submissions. Enraged, he packed a bag and traveled to Kyoto. For 3 days, he stayed in a hotel near the studio, making repeated trips to the building. Afterward, he went to a hardware store to buy a metal trolley, which he then wheeled 6 miles to a gas station where he purchased 10 gallons of gasoline. On July 18, 2019, at around 10 a.m., Shinji entered the Kyoto Animation building wheeling the trolley full of gasoline. Without warning, he poured fuel across the premises and set it on fire. He also doused some individuals in gasoline, accidentally igniting himself in the process. The fire spread rapidly, engulfing the 3-story building. Though severely burned, Shinji was quickly subdued by employees who recognized him. The blaze continued for 5 hours, and by the time it was extinguished, 34 people had died on the spot, with 20 of those found on stairways, suggesting they were trying to escape. 2 more died at the hospital, bringing the total death toll to 36. Shinji Aoba was arrested but required extensive medical treatment for his burns, remaining hospitalized until May 2020. On January 25, 2024, he was sentenced to death and currently remains on death row. Otaku Killer. Tsutomu Miyazaki was born into a wealthy Japanese family that ran a successful newspaper company. Because his parents were often busy, he was mainly raised by his grandfather and a nanny. Miyazaki was born with a rare defect that caused his hand joints to be fused together. This made him a target of exclusion and bullying, leaving him isolated from his peers. With no real social life, he immersed himself in anime, manga, and horror. Initially, he did well in school, but his grades eventually dropped, preventing him from gaining admission to a university. Instead, he attended a local junior college to study photography, a path far removed from the dark one he would later take. In addition to his parents not having time for him, his siblings didn't seem to care much either. Miyazaki's grandfather, however, was very supportive of him and close to him. So when he died in May 1988, his depression and isolation deepened. It was around this time that his killing spree began. His first victim was Mari Kono, whom he lured from a friend's house into his car and drove west of Tokyo. There, he parked under a bridge in a wooded area, killed her, and then violated her body before dumping it in the nearby hills. Later, Miyazaki mailed her family a box containing some of her remains, along with a postcard reading, "Mari, bones, cremated, investigate, prove." Between August 1988 and June 1989, Miyazaki kidnapped, killed, and 3 more girls in a similar fashion. He would lure them, take explicit photos and videos, then kill them and send proof to their families. On July 23, 1989, Miyazaki attempted to abduct 2 sisters. While the younger sister followed him, the older one ran to call their father. Fortunately, he was caught mid-attempt taking explicit photos of the victim. After a brief struggle, Miyazaki fled on foot but returned later to retrieve his car, and by then police officers were waiting to arrest him. A search of his home revealed over 5,000 videotapes, anime collections, and materials related to his victims. The sheer extent of his anime and manga obsession earned him the nickname Otaku Killer. On April 15, 1997, Tsutomu Miyazaki was sentenced to death.
本日、山崎義雄、六田真治、宮崎勉の3名の死刑を執行しました。慎重に検討を加えた結果、この3名を粛々と執行させていただくことに決めたわけで、正義の実現のために法の支配する国をしっかり守っていくために粛々と死刑を執行しております。
He remained on death row until June 2008, when he was executed. And for cases from this iceberg that were too intense for YouTube, check out our free Patreon from the link in the description.